Well, guys, I'm super excited that we're here week one of Holy Shift. Like I said, we've been spending a minute getting off the throne. It's been a 13-week journey, and we had a fun experience the other day. We were doing teardown. Pastor Truss and Pastor Whitney like to go by and just say, love you, thank you to everybody. And one of our friends, Emerson, comes by with a little bit, like he's walking like this. And they're like, oh, Emerson, what's going on? What's wrong, man? He's like, well, you guys have been lobbing bricks at me for 13 weeks, like in this series. And so I bought our pastors their very own truth bricks this week so that they can feel what it's like to have truth bricks thrown at them from stage. Y'all give it up for our pastors, man. It's not easy. It's not easy to bring the level of truth and the level of the Bible applied to your life and make it easy for someone like me to understand that they bring. And I'm not only a pastor here, they are my pastors. And so I'm with you, and I'm walking with a little bit of a limp after that series, after God has called me to get off the throne of so many things. But I was reading this week, and I read in Ephesians 4:1, Paul says, I urge you to walk in a manner worthy of the calling you've received. And what that means is that sometimes following Jesus means walking with a limp for the rest of your life. And as you walk and people say, hey, well, you should have seen me before he did it. This is me healed. But I'm going to walk with a limp that shows that, hey, he's healed me from and I'm working to walk worthy of my calling. I think that's the desire of all of us, right? I think all of us want to walk worthy of the calling that God's given us. I feel it in me that something has shifted in us as a church. Something has shifted in many of you guys personally, and we're not the same. We're not the same that we were at the beginning of January 2023. Like, something has changed within us, and I would echo what Pastor said, that we're in a new era as a church. A new era that's never been seen before. We've been off the throne, and now we've posted up a sign that says, under new management. And our lives spiritually and personally are under management as we're off the throne. Now, here's what I know. It's that as I read history, I love reading stories. And when you read about history and revolutions, they would tear people down off of a throne. But if you're not careful about what you put in replacement there, then sometimes you end up with something even worse. Judges talks about a season where there was no one on the throne of Israel. They weren't listening to God. They weren't listening to anyone else. And it says everybody did what was right in their own eyes. And so I know that if we're not intentional about what we replace on the throne, that we may end up back where we started or even worse off. And so there's this moment that our church is in that's really important. And the enemy would love to take the vacancy on your throne and fill it with a whole bunch of other stuff. And so that's why to get off the throne is not enough. There has to be a holy shift. We're on this journey as a church, and there's a necessary part, a next step for all of us in this season. Because here's what I know, that getting off the throne takes a moment, but staying off the throne takes a lifetime. That you can get off the throne in a service like a couple of weeks ago. It's easy to stop your pity party and get off the throne, but learning to stay off of it, that's work, right? That's work, because what happens is we get off the throne on Sunday, and then Monday comes every, I don't know what part of the country you're from, but here, Monday always follows Sunday. And after I got off the throne on Sunday, then on Monday, the spring to my garage door breaks. And I got to jump back on that throne of the purse, man. On Sunday, I got off the throne, but on Monday, my kids will not get their shoes on and get in the car before school. And I'm losing that temper, man. I got off the throne on Sunday, but on Monday, the doctor's reports came back and the lab results looked a little funny. And it's easy to put WebMD back on that throne. I got off the throne on Sunday, but on Monday I found out at work that not only did I not get the promotion, but my boss actually cut my hours. It's easy, man. What the enemy wants to do is, once you're off the throne, he wants to give you a dozen reasons to jump right back on, to just slide a cheek on, and to stop the shift that's happening in your life. And so we got to talk about it over the next few weeks, this series that we're in called Holy Shift. Because guaranteed that when Sunday you get off the throne, Monday your shift's going to hit the fan. And that's the title of my message today, When the Shift Hits the Fan. Everybody say it with me. When the shift hits the fan. I think we all intuitively want to shift into more, right? My friends have a podcast, my pastors, that's called The Tug of More. Any Tug of More listeners in here? You on the tug team? And they talk about it every episode. They say, hey, the tug of more is the space between where you are and where you want to be. It's the tug, right? All of us have that tug, that desire to shift into more. I don't know many people that are just like, it's fine. You know, everybody wants to be more than they are, which is why every January we make resolutions, right? How you guys doing with those? How y'all doing? It's been 17 weeks since January 1st. It was a Sunday. How y'all doing with those resolutions, y'all? Because I know if you're anything like me, and you're anything like 40,000 Americans that were studied, they determined that most of us abandon our resolutions by the second Friday in January. That's like 13 days, y'all. Like 12 days. It's not even 2 weeks. And most of us are like, nah, I'm out. And you know what? The problem is that January has no power to change us. Only Jesus does. And so that's why resolutions don't work. You see, we end up at the end of the year and we weigh more than we wanted to weigh, or we spent more than we wanted to spend, or we made it really gung-ho through Exodus, but we hit Leviticus like a brick wall, dude, and we bottom out. It's why, like, I go to the gym in January and I don't immediately drop 50 pounds, and I'm like, man, bump this. I'm out of here. Because most of us, we want the gift, we just don't want the shift. You know, we want the work that comes afterwards, but not the work it takes to get there and to finish out the shift. And so it's important that we engage in this holy shift. Because that's what happens, right? The minute it gets uncomfortable, it gets easy to lose our shift. The minute things get hard, it becomes tough to stay off the throne and keep shifting. Shift happens. Shift happens, and when it does, it rubs against our preferences. It makes it difficult. It makes it hard. It's not what we would prefer. And so even though we got off the throne of preferences, shift happens, and then pastor starts lobbing more bricks at us, and he talks about something a little too much, or he talks about something not quite enough, and it just rubs on our preferences, right? And at that point, it's easy to lose our shift. I wish I didn't have to talk about it. I mean, the reality is we did Team Sunday during Get Off the Throne, right? And we had everybody split off, and we had this great time where we said, hey, get off the throne of your preference and look for a team to serve on. And can I tell you, we had people that wrote us emails and left because it rubbed against their preference. I get it. It's not easy. It's not comfortable to say the things we say from stage sometimes, but it rubs against our preference. And it's really easy to use that as an excuse to lose our shift in that moment. As a pastor, I see people lose their shift all the time. They lose it all the time. Big one that happens to me, I get scared to start sometimes. I lose my shift because my wife Bethany and I, when our house is like super dirty, you're like, golly, what room do we even start with? You know, like I don't even know where to start. You know what happens? You get scared shiftless. Yeah, it scares the shift out of you, and you end up not knowing even like where to begin. This happens to me. It happened to me in my health journey. Last year, I started to have some things that happened that weren't right, and I went to but I was terrified as I went to the doctor because I was so worried that I've spent 36 years screwing it up that there would be no room for me to go. In fact, I remember getting some CAT scans and just being terrified, like shaking on the bed, and they're like, please don't move. But I'm shaking because in my mind, I'm just seeing my body like riddled with cancer. That's the image I'm seeing. That's not real. That's the fear and the weapon of the enemy. But he wants to keep you scared so you stay put. He wants to keep you afraid of doing the work and what you're going to find so he can keep you right where you are. Some of us are just scared to start. Some of us, we lose our shift because we messed up one time. You know, we were doing so good, man. We were shifting for 2 years, we were shifting. And then we had one bad day. And we're like, man, I mean, I raised my hand that one time, or I got baptized. It must not have taken. I must not be cut out for this. And we lose our shift. We lose it. There's a lot of us that, man, you're like this. You're like, it's not happening fast enough. I went there and I didn't immediately see results. And this isn't as easy as I thought it was going to be. And so because it's not happening fast enough, you lose your shift. And then I think there's another group in the room that we use the excuse, this is just who I am. We use words like, I'm genetically predisposed. And we use things like our family tree or our number on the Enneagram or the list of our prescriptions to justify why we can't shift. I can tell you that's a lie of the enemy, saying that your personality or your makeup or your family upbringing is why you can't shift. That's exactly where he wants to keep you. And I'm so grateful for House Party because what we see is generational curses that are being broken because you had one person, just one person, a mom or dad that said, you know what? It dies with me. And I'm going to do the work to make the shift so my kids never have to deal with this shift. So they don't have to put up with it. Oh, I'm going to be saying it all day long. So y'all just better buckle up. This is going to be punny Sunday. All right. Here we go. That's why it's more than a resolution. It's got to be a holy shift. It can't be a resolution. It's got to be a holy shift for us. This isn't like, I know it's funny, he's saying shift, ha, ha, ha. This isn't just a cute sermon series title that we came up with. It's a deep conviction as a staff that we've been talking about. Because our greatest fear for us and our greatest fear for you is that you would get off the throne and stop short of shifting. That you would get off the throne and leave really nobody in the driver's seat. And that's not where we want to be. We don't want to be a church that stops short of shifting. We want to be a church that shifts into a new era in everything that God has for us. And so we're committed to this as a staff. It's our prayer for you. So my greatest fear for you, and you're going to help me today, is that you're going to survive the shift. And so I need you guys to help me so I can rest easy at night by helping me. You're going to repeat this after me. On the count of three, we're going to say, I will survive the shift. All right, everybody ready? 1, 2, 3. I will survive the shift. Thank you, guys. I'm not going to lose my shift. I'm excited about this series. You're probably sitting there going, okay, that's a really neat title, but what is a holy shift? What even is that? And I'm glad you asked. Sometimes it's helpful to talk about things not in what they are, but sometimes it's helpful to define what they're not first. What I can tell you is that a holy shift is not behavior modification. Have you ever tried to change your behavior by not doing something or not thinking about something? So you're like, I'm not going to eat pizza. I'm not going to eat pizza. I'm not going to eat pizza. And there's a knock at the door and it's Papa John's. And what happens? Or I'm not going to look at things I shouldn't. I'm not going to look at things I shouldn't. And then all of a sudden, they're just everywhere. It's not enough to just talk about what we don't need to do. You can't just change the behavior. If you don't change the heart, the behavior is going to come back. And so we've got to be committed to completely changing something at a deeper level. Paul talks about this in Romans chapter 7. In verse 15, he says, I don't really understand myself, for I want to do what's right. My little thing is messing with me today, so y'all just bear with me. I want to do what is right, but I don't do it. Instead, I do what I hate. I want to do what is right, but I can't. I want to do what is good, but I don't. I don't want to do what is wrong, but I do it anyway. I've discovered this principle in life, that when I want to do what is right, I inevitably do what is wrong. I love God with all my heart, but there is another power within me that is at war with my mind. This power makes me a slave to all the sin that is still within me. Paul talks about this struggle that's common to man. He says, I want to do what's right, but there's two people that live inside me. There's this guy that wants to do what's right and wants to please the Spirit, but there's also this guy that lives in the flesh and wants to do what's easy. And they're always at war with each other. It's always inside of me. For a season of my life, when I was the kids pastor here, I wasn't really rolling in the money at the time, and I had a job to make ends meet at a store called Apple. Yep, little known company out of California that I worked there to fix people's phones all day long. And so all day long, people would bring in phones to me that were broken. And as long as they hadn't like dropped it or something, what we were usually looking at was like software problem. You guys know what software is, right? It's the stuff that makes the phone work. And so what would happen is we would erase the phone. We would bring their backup, all their stuff from the iCloud, and half the time it would work. But the other half of the time, the same issue would come back. And then we had to have a really uncomfortable conversation with them. We had to say, hey, look, the bad news is that your backup is corrupted. That what has been stored to the backup is the same problem. And so every time you take that stuff and re-download it again, you're going to end up back where you started. The problem is you need to start fresh with a new operating system. So what we're going to have to do is clear out everything, clear out the deck, make a shift, and you're going to have to start fresh with a whole new operating system. And there's so many of you guys that say, man, I don't understand it. I can't. I want to do what is right, but I can't. And it's because you're using the same operating system, and there needs to be a new operating system, a new shift, all in your mind that changes everything from bottom one. It's important, guys. It's not enough to just change what we're doing on the outside. It's not enough to just remove what's broken. It's not enough to just get off the throne. We need a spiritual transformation, not just behavior modification. We need a holy shift. 1 Corinthians 15:10, Paul continues that thought. He says, whatever I am now, it is all because God poured out his special favor on me. It was not I, but God who was working through me by his grace. You see, Paul understood that in my own flesh, in my own trying, I'm never going to make ends meet. But when I allow God to re-download the way I think, to re-download the way I process things, to re-download the way I work, when I allow his spirit to become a new operating system in me, I can make a holy shift. I can make it to the end. I can survive the shift. It's not a shift to us. It's a shift through us. It's not something that God is just going to like download in your memory bank and you're going to have it all together and you're going to have no residue from your previous lifestyle. It's something new that happens in you. Progressive sanctification. The process every day of making small steps of obedience in the same direction. If you're taking notes, you're going to want to write this next part down because I'm going to give you the cheat code today to how to make a holy shift. Every shift has a how, and every shift has a why. Every shift has a why, every shift has a how. That's a shift. And so let me give you an example. Your why. I want my skinny jeans to look more like skinny jeans and less like fat jeans. That's your why. Your how. Well, last year it was CrossFit and this year it's pickleball. But that's your how that you're going to get there. Now, the problem is that is entirely up to you. That shift is completely resting on your shoulders. And that's not enough. We need a new operating system, remember? And so for a holy shift to be a holy shift, this is groundbreaking, y'all. It has to be holy. So you need a why, you need a how, you need holy, and that makes a holy shift. That's the cheat code to how you make the holy shift in your life. A shift becomes holy when it's no longer just about me. You see, a shift is all about like, I want to look better. I want to be Instagram worthy. I want this to happen in my life. I want to make more money. I want to stop being broke. A holy shift starts asking questions like who or what is on the other side of my obedience. A holy shift becomes holy when it's not just about you, but it's about your kids and the ones that come after them. A holy shift becomes about holy shift when it's not just about what God's going to do for you, but what he's going to do through you to others. That's what makes it a holy shift. And so over the next few moments, I just want to walk through some of the stories of what God called me to get off the throne of and be a little bit transparent with you guys in the hopes that it will help you. In the hopes that you will help, that my why will help influence your why. and it will help you understand what it's going to take to get you there. One of the biggest ones that hit me over the last few weeks was when Pastor Whitney preached on getting off the throne of protection. You see, not 2020, March 30th, 2020, that's the day that my mom passed away from pancreatic cancer. And it's also, incoincidentally, the same day that I stepped down as a pastor of this church. Because I was in this season where it's not easy, guys, to lead while you bleed sometimes. And I realized that, like, what was happening in my personal life was painting everything else. And I wasn't seeing things right or hearing things right anymore. And it was through the wisdom and encouragement of my friends that I was able to make a shift, because I had this choice, really. I could be a good dad, I could be a good husband, I could be a good pastor, but I could not be all three. And I had to choose one of them to let go of. And since I'm not willing to sacrifice my family on the altar of ministry, I decided to make a shift and get off the throne for a while. It was super hard. It was super hard. But over the next couple of years, God taught me a lot of things about myself. He taught me that he called me to be a pastor, and that didn't come from like a paycheck or a business card, but that was like inextricably who I was. And that I could be a pastor at Mauser Electronics and be perfectly fine. And he taught me a lot of things about getting off the throne, and I learned so much about myself. But in that season, the enemy learned a new trick. He learned a new cheat code. Because suddenly words like pancreas or family history started to put this fear that I can't quite like put into words in the pit of my gut. And as things started to look right, and doctors started to look at my family history and make some assumptions about like what I was walking through and paint my diagnosis with that, I started to get really afraid. And if you were to ask me at the time, well, dude, what's your why? It would have probably been like, I don't want to die, or I want to like live a lot longer, which is not a bad why. It just only has to do with me. It's not really a holy shift. It's just kind of a shift. And so this is kind of what I came up with in terms of if I were to try to create like a holy why. Remember that a goal becomes holy when it becomes more about me and what I get out of it. And so I said it like this. I remember that God has given me the victory over death, that he plans to prosper me and not to harm me, and that no amount of worry can add 1 minute to his plan for me. And so I remembered that, and that was like my declaration. You guys will see me sometimes. I got this necklace so that I could remember that. It's got a ... and a dash on it, and that's Morse code for the letter V. And it reminds me when I'm feeling unsure about myself and the plan God has for me that he's given me victory. And so if you see me up here on the front row doing this, I'm not flashing you the deuce. I'm reminding myself that God's given me the victory over these circumstances. Because every little new symptom that happens is an invitation for me to put WebMD back on the throne. And in those moments, I have to remember God's given me the victory over death, and that no amount of worry is going to change his plan that he's already made for me. And it helps me to stay off the throne of protection, to help keep making the holy shift. This was another one. I had to get off the throne of my purse. And not for the reasons you'd think, because I've always kind of understood tithing and like God's called to be generous. I don't want to brag, but I'm a pretty generous guy. And I use that as an excuse with my wife. This in a season of our life, not recently, but several years ago, I gave away a car, like my car that I drove, in the context of like a staff meeting, and I didn't ask her. And I just like called her one day like, hey, can you come pick me up? Because I like gave my car away. And it's easy for me to like say, well, like she'd get mad and me go, okay, well, fine. Well, one day when we get to heaven, we'll ask Jesus who he liked better. And I bet it's going to be me, you know. And that's really dumb. Because it's really easy to like use super spiritual reasons for bad choices. And what I was doing, what over the process of, like, I didn't come up with this. Y'all, my counselor helped me come up with this. So this is not like me being super smart. This is my counselor calling me out for my shift. And he said, and saying, like, hey, did you ever, like, consider that maybe when you were doing that, that you were robbing her of her ability to have peace and security? Because of you being so generous without guardrails, you're not giving her the opportunity to have peace, that you're going to take care of her, that God's going to take care of her. And, dude, I had never considered what that behavior was doing to her. And what I've learned, this is kind of my holy why, is that everything I have comes from God. And one way I worship is by stewarding my resources effectively. I can bless within margin, and she can have security at the same time. They're not mutually exclusive. You can't have one without the other. We can both get what we want, and we can be generous and have a hedge of protection around our family. I have to remember to get off the throne of my purse. I had to, this is a big one for me, and kind of like a recurring thing that I'm always working on, is getting off the throne of my past. And not my past of what I've done, but the past that's been done to me. Because as much as I'd love to say that I feel like I've got it all together at Pastor Timm, there's a big part of me that says, you know what, like, one day I'll screw it up so bad with Jude, Finn, and Sloan that they'll hate me too. And that they'll just be waiting on a call one day that I'm dead. And that will be kind of like the end of the story. And I had a dinner with my friend, Pastor Trustin, and he said, dude, you're not your dad. I don't know how else to, like, make you see that even on your worst day, you're not him. And so even if you have a really bad day and you lose your cool with Jude, the thing that's different is that you know you messed up and you seek to make it right. And that's not your dad, man. You're not your dad. And you're not going to be him. The shift that's happened in you, it's permanent. And no one can take it away. You're not just going to wake up one day and be like, who am I? It's a holy shift that's happened, and nobody can take it away from you. This is one we didn't preach on, but maybe we should have. It's getting off the throne of your personality. You see, because in a season, like I told you, I stepped out of ministry and I started working in the corporate workplace, and I started to pick up some elements of my personality there that helped me survive in a season, but were not beneficial for a new era. And so I picked up like this sarcastic spirit, and I picked up this bravado of strength that helped me survive when everybody was out to get me. But when I came back, it was still on me, and it was still coming out on my friends and my peers. And Pastor Whitney brought me into her office, and she said, hey, I don't even know if you're fully aware, but that thing that's still attached to you, it's not who you are, and you don't need it anymore, because that's not where you are anymore. And so you don't need to, like, bow up all the time. You don't need to survive. You're in a safe place here. And I had to learn that, you know what, shifting means letting some things die. Shifting means leaving some things behind to step into a new season, to make the shift. I would say it like this, that I'm a new creation with access to the fruits of the Spirit. And instead of responding in anger, I can choose to respond with gentleness, with kindness, or with love. Because I get it. You're like, dude, I know why. Like, I know, I understand why I want to make the shift. I just don't know how. That's okay, because I'm not disciplined. I'm the least disciplined person in the entire world. But Christ in me is disciplined. What some of you guys have just failed to connect is that the how is not always entirely dependent on you. Zechariah 4:6 says, you will succeed not by might or by your own strength, but by my Spirit. What makes the shift holy is that I'm not having to do it alone. Man, I was a kids pastor, so I love these kind of pictures, but this is what I would tell your kids all the time, because it can be really hard with everything that we're juggling to try to keep it all going and be a dad and be a husband and be a pastor and be an employee, and to keep everything going when you're doing it in your own strength. It's really easy to let a ball drop. But remember, it's not by power, it's not by might, but it's by your spirit, because God's going to come alongside you, and he's going to make it really easy for you to do it. And so he's like, you're doing it by yourself, but if you would just start trusting my spirit, it's going to make it really easy for you to keep things going. I don't know where that's going anymore. You don't have to do it by yourself. That's why it's called a holy shift. So I've got just a couple of things today that I want to leave you with. I get it. You understand the why, hopefully, now, but let me help you with the how. How do I shift? The first thing I'd say is shift gradually. Shift gradually. I started working out with my friend Jace back in the fall last year, and I went really like gung-ho like the first 3 days, dude. We were out there with Jace, and we were there with Pastor Philip. That dude's a machine, and he always wears a hoodie, no matter how hot it is, no matter what temperature it is in the gym. He's always wearing a hoodie, and I don't know if you guys are competitive. I'm competitive, so like, I'm like trying to keep up with them, and it's like my first day. It's like couch to 5K, and I'm just coming off cold turkey trying to work out. And you know what happened? It's probably happened to you. I spent the next like 3 weeks like I was handicapped. Because that leg day on Tuesday, y'all, we're at the North Campus. You know, we've got those stairs that go into like that reception area. I couldn't go up the stairs. I had to go up the ramp because I couldn't even physically function anymore. You got to shift gradually. It's not going to happen in a day. You know what? Get 1% better at it. Whatever it is that God's called you to get off the throne, just get 1% better at it a day. At the end of the year, you got 365% better at that junk. Anybody can get 1% better at something a day. Keep working. Shift gradually, y'all. Small steps of obedience in the same direction. Faithful, 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 faithful. And you won't even notice, but people are going to start to notice fruitful. You won't even recognize yourself at the end of a year. Shift together. Don't shift alone. Stay in community. Guys, we say it every week from stage. Get in a known zone. Get in a known zone. It's not because we're trying to get something from you. We're trying to get something to you. Guys, it's for your benefit. Because I don't know very many prideful people that are in community. You know why? Because my people call me out for my shift. When there's something wrong with my walk, my friends are kind of making fun since day one. I've had these feet that kind of turn out, and like so my walk's a little bit off. And my friends, they call me out on my walk in a loving, joking way. They say, "Hey, dude, something's off with your walk." In the same way, when I'm not being who I'm supposed to be, and I'm not being everything that God's called me to be, I have people that tell me about it. Do you have community that will really call you out for your shift and say, "Hey, dude, how are you doing?" You got to have friends that will say, "How are you doing?" And then follow it up with the second question, "Did you just lie to me?" And you give them permission to call you out for your shift. You got to shift together. And then lastly, I would just say, shift again. Shift again. When you fail, because you will, do it again. Reset it. When Sunday you got off the throne and Monday you jacked it all up, just say on Tuesday, you know what? Same shift, different day. Same shift, different day. I'm just going to restart. I'm going to redo it. God's going to do it again. Just shift again. Because God doesn't just love the finish line version of you. God loves you in the middle of it. When you're so tired of it, you don't want to take another lap. He loves you right there. So shift again, man. You know, we get really tired of as adults of like repetition. We get really tired of monotony. Kids don't. I love kids, man. They don't get tired of it. My daughter Sloan, when we're at the soccer field and my son is practicing soccer, she'll be like, "Daddy, chase me." And so I'll chase her, and I'll stop to get a breath of oxygen. And she'll be like, "Again." And so she'll run off, and I'll chase her, and then she'll say, "Again." And we'll do it again and again and again until we feel like we're going to die. But we get over it really, really fast as adults. I don't think God gets over it. I don't think God gets tired of repetition. I don't think God tires of trying to see you try. I think that God, when the morning comes, he says, do it again every morning to the sun. And he never gets tired of it. Every night when the moon rises, he says, do it again. You know the reason that there are no two snowflakes that are alike, they tell us? I don't think it's because God gets tired of making snowflakes. I think he just does each one again and again and again, and he never gets tired of it. And in the same way, he doesn't get tired of watching you try and watching you shift into everything that he has for you. And so when you mess up, he's just there in heaven going, that's okay, do it again. Do it again, because my mercies are new every morning. So do it again. My forgiveness, do it again. My forgiveness, I say again to my spirit, again to my patience, again to everything that I have for you in my favor in your life, again and again and again. Do it again. I didn't share this story in the last service. Philippians 1:6. Paul says, I'm confident of this, that he who began a good work in you will carry it through to completion. He'll finish it. There's this story, if I could share a story. I love good ones, and this is a good one. There's a story about a mom who is tough, times are tough, and she doesn't have a lot of money. But she wants to encourage her son, and she's really trying to get him to get a hold of the piano lesson she's been paying for. He's a kid, he's a boy, and he hasn't really been focused in on it. And so she hears about this piano master that's coming to town. She scrounges up, she saves up for weeks, and she buys tickets to this opera hall to see this piano master. His name is Paderewski. And she's going to take her son there with the hopes that through osmosis, through watching him, that he gets a hold of what he could be if he would just buckle down and try again. And so she takes him, and they're standing in the wings in chairs much like the ones you're sitting in, waiting for the concert to start. And she gets to talking to somebody on her left or on her right, and is not really paying attention. And she starts to look around, and she realizes that her son's not there anymore. And so she starts to kind of panic, like, where is he? Where's he gone? And then she sees him, about the time everybody else does, on stage, sitting in front of the baby grand piano. And she starts to panic. And the kid, and he starts to play Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, one note at a time. And people are starting to snicker. They're starting to whisper to each other. She's panicking as a mom. I can imagine she's running down the aisle. She's going to go rip him off the stage and tear him a new one. And before she can get there, the piano master walks out from the corner of the stage from the wings. And he walks directly to her son. And she's probably panicking, but he goes over to the kid. He leans over him, and he whispers, just keep playing. It's okay, just keep playing. And as this kid is banging out this one-note version of Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, the piano master reaches around on his right and reaches around on his left and starts playing notes that the kid can't even comprehend, but that complement this little simple melody that he's playing. And before long, the audience that was snickering is silent, staring, can't believe what's happening. Because there's this, what was a kid's one-note song has become this masterful symphony. People start to have tears roll down their cheeks. The audience is completely silent. And at the end of it, he stands up, and the whole place goes nuts. A roaring ovation. Can I tell you today that God's leaning over you, saying, just keep playing. Just keep shifting. I know to you it doesn't feel like a lot, but you're making more progress than you can even recognize. So don't let the enemy, don't let circumstances, don't let what comes tomorrow cause you to lose your shift. Just keep shifting. Can I pray for you today? Father, I pray that as we step into this season as a church, that we wouldn't be a church that stopped short of shifting, that we wouldn't just get off the throne and leave it vacant, but that you would help us to complete the work that you've already started. We believe you're going to do it. We believe that what you've started in us, you're going to finish it. Help us over the next few weeks as we learn how to make the shift inside of us. Help us to be present, to not lose hope when our preferences get in the way. Help us to keep getting off the throne. This series may be over, but the journey has just begun. We know you're going to do it. We know you're going to finish it. Help us to keep making a holy shift. In your name we pray, amen.